They say she's happy now. No more arguments, no more compromises, no more man to clean up after. Her friends call her strong. Her family claps at her independence. Her co-workers say she's glowing, but no one sees what happens when the house gets too quiet. That smile, practiced. That laugh, hollow. That strength, it cracks at night, right when the silence begins to whisper. She tells the world she's moved on, that she's at peace, that she made the right decision. But when the screen goes dark, when there are no more likes, no more comments, no new texts, she starts to wonder. She wonders if he thinks of her, if he's happy, if he misses her the way she misses him, quietly, shamefully, like a secret too painful to say out loud. She posts sunsets with captions about healing, shares quotes about choosing herself, tags her friends in jokes about toxic men. But every time she uploads a story, she checks to see if he watched. She says she doesn't care. She swears she doesn't care. But she does, because once he was hers. He wasn't perfect. He forgot things. He stayed quiet when she wanted words. He was stubborn, distracted, but he was constant, and he loved her in ways she didn't understand until after he was gone. When she left, she thought he would chase her beg, apologize, fall to his knees in regret. But he didn't. He let her walk, not because he didn't love her, but because he finally realized that love isn't enough to hold someone who already packed their pride. She moved on, or tried to. She met new people. She smiled at dinners. She dated, flirted, even slept beside others. But none of them were him, and none of them stayed. Years passed. She stopped telling her friends about the ache. She filled her calendar with noise, but the quiet always came back. And when it did, so did he, in her mind. She'd never say it out loud, not to her friends, not to her mother, not even to her therapist. But every so often, she'd type his name into her phone. Look at the last message. Read it. Delete nothing. Say nothing. Just hope. Hope he thinks of her. Hope he remembers. Hope he's out there somewhere, missing her too. Because as much as she fought to leave, a part of her still waits for him to return. She said she was happy, and maybe she almost is. But deep down, where the pride doesn't reach, where the truth can't be filtered or cropped, she secretly hopes he'll come back one day. They say they're happier now, that they finally chose themselves, that they don't need anyone, especially not a man. And maybe that's what they truly believe, because in this world, nothing is more praised than a woman who walks away and doesn't look back. Now I'm free. Now I'm finally living. I don't owe anyone anything. They say these words with pride, with fire in their eyes, with the kind of conviction that makes even their friends believe them. But the question isn't what they say. It's why they have to say it so often. Why repeat something if it's already true? Why shout your happiness into the void if you're really at peace? Because real peace is quiet. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't beg to be seen. It simply is. But what we see now is not peace. It's performance. A performance rehearsed and polished in Instagram captions, in self-help slogans, in podcasts about finding your truth. And yet, behind all that noise, there's something hollow. She posts a photo of herself on the beach, wine in hand, captioned, "Finally whole on my own." But the smile doesn't reach her eyes. She says, "I'm not bitter. I'm healing. I'm focused on my goals." And maybe she is. Maybe part of her is truly moving on. But if that's the case, why does his name still come up? Why does she bring him into conversations where he doesn't belong anymore? I was too patient with him. He never appreciated me. He lost the best thing that ever happened to him. No one asked, but she says it anyway, because deep down, she's not trying to convince others. She's trying to convince herself. The truth is, we live in a time where victimhood is a currency and heartbreak is a brand. A woman who says, "He hurt me, I grew, I don't need him now," gets likes, shares, support. A woman who says, "I miss him," gets silence, so she learns the rules. She learns to smile through the cracks, to post when she's lonely, to caption her pain as power. And the saddest part, no one even questions it anymore. We just scroll past and say, "She's glowing. She's better off. She deserves more." But I've seen behind the mask. I've seen what happens when the camera is off, when the brunch is over, when the wine is finished, when the room goes dark and she lays down in a bed that used to be shared. I've seen the tears that don't make it to the screen, the late night calls she never makes, the messages she writes and deletes. They say she's free, but she's not. She's stuck in a narrative she created, but no longer believes. Because saying you're happy is not the same as being happy, and repeating the story doesn't make it real. So I ask again, if you're truly over him, if you've truly healed, then why is he still the first thought when you're alone? Why do his memories still live in the quiet corners of your mind? Why do you still wear the mask? She didn't leave because he was cruel. She didn't leave because he cheated. She didn't even leave because he stopped loving her. She left because he wasn't there yet. Because at 33, he was still building, still trying to figure it out, still chasing something invisible, a dream, a business, a vision that only he could see. She saw it as distraction. He saw it as purpose. To her, it felt like neglect. To him, it felt like sacrifice. But the truth, they weren't in the same race. At 30, a woman is peaking. Her confidence, her beauty, her options. All at once, the world opens up for her, and she starts to believe she can do better. Not because he was bad, but because he wasn't done yet. He had rough edges. He had flaws. He had plans, too many and too far away. He didn't take her to Paris. He didn't surprise her with flowers every week. He didn't read her mind. He was focused, silent, driven. And to her, that looked like emotional distance. But she didn't understand. A man in his 30s is still forging himself. He's becoming, and becoming is messy. So she started to doubt, started to ask questions her friends had planted in her head. Is this really the man I want forever? What if someone else is already the man he's still trying to be? Her friends told her she deserved more. Social media told her she was settling. Her own impatience told her that time was running out. And so, she left. She didn't walk away from him. She walked away from the unfinished version of him. He didn't cry. He didn't beg. He didn't even stop her. Because deep down, he knew she wasn't leaving him. She was leaving the weight for success, the weight for peace, the wait for a man to finally become solid. But here's the thing. That man she wanted him to be, he became him. Just not with her, because while she was searching for a finished product, he was still in the fire. And when he came out the other side, with clarity, discipline, direction, he was ready. But she wasn't there. She had moved on, started over, tried to replace him with men who looked ready, but were just pretending. And now, she watches from a distance. She sees the life he built, the quiet confidence, the strength, the peace, and she realizes he was never lacking. He was just becoming. And she left too early, because women in their 30s are told to rush, to choose quickly, to never waste time. But some things, the best things, take time. And while she chose based on the present, he was living for the future. That's the difference. He was building for forever. She was reacting to the now, and forever never came, because she didn't wait for the man he would become. She left him, not for who he was, but for who he wasn't yet. At 40, something shifts, not all at once, not with fireworks, but quietly, like a light dimming slowly until you realize you're sitting in the dark. The compliments become rarer, the invitation slower, the birthdays quieter, and for the first time, she has to sit with herself, just herself. No plans, no distractions, no noise, just the silence and everything it brings with it. At 40, the phone doesn't light up like it used to. The DMs are quieter. The eyes that once followed her into every room now glance and pass. At 40, she no longer walks into a room expecting attention. Now, she just hopes to be noticed. The world didn't change suddenly. She just aged out of its spotlight. And the thing is, she never saw it coming, because in her 30s, she was told she was limitless, powerful, desired. She could have it all, and she believed it. But no one warned her that having it all comes with an expiration date. And now, in the stillness of 40, the memories echo louder than ever. She remembers his laugh, his steady voice, his annoying routines, his quiet presence. The same presence she once called boring. Now, she misses it, not because he was perfect, but because back then she was seen. He saw her, even when the world didn't. And now that the world has moved on, she realizes he might have been the last person who truly did. She doesn't say it out loud, of course not. She keeps it hidden beneath phrases like, "I'm just focusing on myself. Dating at this age is hard. I'm not settling ever again." But when the house is quiet, when the night stretches long, and the wine glass sits untouched, she replays old conversations, old texts, old fights, and wonders if maybe, just maybe, she misread the whole thing. Maybe he wasn't emotionally unavailable. Maybe he was just tired. Maybe he wasn't distant. Maybe he was drowning. Maybe she didn't ask the right questions. Maybe she didn't stay long enough to hear the answers. At 40, the ego softens, the pride loosens, and all that's left is the truth. She left too soon, expected too much, gave too little, and now she walks through a life built on independence, but haunted by memory. She sees him sometimes in the face of someone else, in a familiar smell, in the back of a crowded coffee shop. But it's never really him because he moved on, not out of revenge, not to prove a point, but because life demanded it. And while she was searching for better, he became better for someone else. Now, at 40, she scrolls through his wedding photos, watches his new life from a distance, smiles politely, says she's happy for him, then closes the phone and sits in the quiet, that same quiet where the truth always finds her. She doesn't want every man to come back, just the one she pushed away before he finished becoming at 40. The energy changes. The world no longer spins around her. Now she listens, to her own echo. He didn't chase her. He didn't beg. He didn't fight. She said she was done, and he nodded quietly, like someone who's already rehearsed this ending 100 times in his head, not because he didn't love her, but because he finally understood something she hadn't yet learned. You can't hold on to someone who's already halfway out the door, so he let her go. And then he disappeared, not in bitterness, not in revenge, but in silence. That kind of silence that hurts more than shouting ever could. At first, she thought it was strategy, that he was trying to punish her, that he'd text after a few days, call after a few weeks, crawl back after a few months. But he didn't, because when a man finally accepts that he was never truly chosen, he stops showing up for a battle he was never meant to win. She moved on, or at least tried to. Dated, traveled, posted, laughed, and he disappeared deeper. He didn't just move on, he evolved. Not dramatically, not loudly, but piece by piece. He rebuilt himself in the dark. He fixed what she criticized. He grew into the man she always wanted him to be, just not for her. And while she waited for the old version of him to crawl back, he became someone new, someone stronger, quieter, more dangerous, not to others, but to the version of himself that once needed permission to feel worthy. He found peace in places she never looked. He built discipline from the pain she left behind, and he stopped needing love to feel whole. He no longer texts long paragraphs. He no longer explains himself. He no longer fights to be understood, because now he understands himself. And what she once called emotionally unavailable wasn't distance. It was damage. It was exhaustion. It was a man trying to hold together a relationship while falling apart inside. But he survived. And by the time she realized what he truly was, it was too late. Because now when she reaches out, he answers with kindness, but not with interest. He listens, but doesn't lean in. He smiles, but doesn't stay. She still hopes he'll come back. But he won't. Not because he hates her, not because he resents her, but because he remembers how it felt to beg to be loved by someone who already made up their mind. He remembers the nights he waited for her to care, the days he performed for her approval, the slow death of becoming invisible to someone he once made his entire world. And now, he refuses to go back, not because he's cold, but because he's finally warm enough on his own. He doesn't hate her. He's simply healed in a way she never expected. She thought he'd return. She thought he'd always be there. She thought love made him loyal, but pain made him wise. And wisdom taught him this. Some doors should stay closed. Some silence should stay sacred. And some men never return. She told herself she was the strong one, that she made the hard choice, that leaving him was an act of courage. She told herself that she outgrew him, that he was holding her back, that she had to choose herself. But what if that wasn't true? What if she didn't leave because she was strong, but because she was scared? Scared that real love requires work. Scared of seeing her own flaws in the mirror he held up. Scared that staying would mean surrendering control. So she left. And then she rewrote the story. She painted herself as the survivor, the warrior, the healed woman. She told her friends, "I had to leave. I had no choice. He wasn't ready for a real woman. I deserve better." And they nodded, clapped, echoed the same lines they used in their own stories. Together, They created a circle of self-deception, a comfort zone of half-truths. And over time, she began to believe it, even when the nights got cold, even when the bed felt too big, even when her heart whispered things her pride wouldn't allow. She silenced the doubt. She watched him succeed, watched him grow, watched other women admire the man she once called not enough. But instead of admitting she misjudged him, she doubled down. "He changed after me," she said. "He's doing that to impress her. He's not really happy. He's pretending." But deep inside, she wasn't talking about him. She was projecting. Because the truth is, he didn't change for anyone. He changed because of what he survived. He grew from the fire she left him in. And while she tells herself that she left a boy behind, the reality is she left a man in progress. Now, he's whole, and she's unsure. She scrolled through memories, but calls them phases. She feels the ache, but labels it growth. She thinks about reaching out, but tells herself, "I've moved on." That's the trick of self-deception. It always sounds like healing. But true healing doesn't need a script. It doesn't need to blame. It doesn't rewrite the past to protect the ego. True healing says, "I messed up. I let go of something real. I acted out of fear, not wisdom." But she's not ready for that. Not yet. Because admitting the truth would collapse the empire she built, the image, the narrative, the performance. And if that falls apart, what's left? A woman staring at a man she once had, realizing too late that she walked away not because he failed her, but because she didn't recognize what she was asking for. She wanted a finished product he was still becoming. And now that he is, she tells herself she never needed him anyway. But if that were true, why does she keep looking back? Why does she compare every new man to him? Why does she replay the arguments, hoping to find a better villain in the footage? Because somewhere deep beneath the layers, she knows. She knows he wasn't perfect, but he was real, and she lost him. Not because he left, but because she couldn't face the truth about herself. She doesn't miss him. She misses the version of herself that existed when he loved her. That woman felt worthy, seen, wanted, and now all she has is the performance, the image of strength, the curated confidence, the story she tells herself. So she never has to admit that she made the mistake. The mistake of walking away from something real and lying to herself ever since. She won't say it out loud, not to her friends, not to her mother, not even to herself. But sometimes, late at night, when the silence is heavy, she imagines it. She imagines the doorbell ringing. She imagines opening the door and finding him there, older, wiser, still in love. She imagines he looks at her with those same eyes, not bitter, not angry, but full of the same warmth he once gave so freely. She imagines he says, "I never stopped loving you. I forgive you. Let's try again." And in her fantasy, she nods. Tears fall. No words are needed, because in that world, nothing is broken anymore. No pride, no pain, no past. Only love, soft, safe, simple. But that world doesn't exist, because in the real world, she'd never open that door. Not without 1,000 conditions. Not without needing to be right first. In the real world, even if he came back, it wouldn't be simple, because too much was said. Too much was broken. She told herself for too long that he wasn't enough. She told the world that she didn't miss him. She built a life without him. So how does she undo all of that with one hug at the doorway? she can't. And that's the tragedy. The fantasy is beautiful because it costs nothing. In her mind, he returns just the way she needs him to. Not harder, not colder, but soft, familiar. Still his old self, but in reality he's changed. Maybe he moved on. Maybe he has someone new. Maybe he's learned to live without her. And maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't come back even if she asked, so she never asks. She keeps the fantasy alive by never testing it, because asking risks rejection. But imagining is safe, so she builds stories in her head, moments that never happened, conversations they never had, a reunion that only plays in the dark corners of her mind. And the saddest part? She doesn't want him back as he is now. She wants the man he was, before the silence, before the distance, before the damage. But that man doesn't exist anymore. He became someone else, someone stronger, someone who stopped waiting. So no, he won't come back. Not because he hates her, not because he forgot her, but because he learned to live in a world where she is just a memory. And she still walks through the ruins of a love she buried too soon, hoping the ghost of that man might someday knock on her door. He won't. But still, some nights when everything is quiet, she imagines it. Because the fantasy is easier than the apology she'll never give. There's a moment in every story where something breaks, quietly and forever. Not with a scream, not with a door slammed shut, just a shift, a silence, a truth that lands too late. She didn't know when it happened. Maybe it was the day she stopped texting him, or the night she saw he didn't watch her story. Maybe it was the birthday he didn't remember. But somewhere along the way, something changed. He stopped being the man she missed and became a man she no longer knew. She kept waiting, not actively, not obviously, but emotionally. She kept a space for him, in her thoughts, in her home, in her heart. A drawer that stayed empty, a photo she never deleted, a piece of jewelry she never wore again. But while she waited, he grew, he healed, he moved forward. And one day, without making an announcement, he passed the point of no return. He no longer flinched at her name, no longer replayed their memories, no longer felt the need to check on her life. She became something he lived through, not someone he waited for. And when she finally looked back, really looked, he was gone. Not just physically, not just emotionally, but spiritually. The connection that once pulled them together had dissolved. And now it was just her, holding the memory of a man who no longer belonged to her story. He had closed the chapter she left open. She thought she had time. She thought healing was linear. She thought distance was temporary. But healing changes people. It doesn't bring them back. It teaches them to live without what hurt them, even if what hurt them was love. She might reach out now. She might finally be ready to talk, to reflect, to take responsibility. But he doesn't respond like before. His words are polite, kind, but distant, and she feels it, that unbearable coldness of being treated like a stranger by someone who once memorized her soul. That's the point of no return. Not anger, not hatred, not even indifference. Just closure she didn't choose, but now has to accept. She sees his new life, his new love, his calm. And deep down, she knows she could have been part of it. If she had stayed, if she had listened, if she had waited, but she didn't. She gambled on time, and time chose him. So now, when she remembers him, she doesn't smile. She doesn't cry. She sits in silence because there's nothing left to say when a door has already closed. And behind that door is not just the man she once loved, but the life she'll never get back. She always thought there would be a moment, a message, a phone call, a knock at the door, something. She didn't say it out loud, not to anyone, but deep inside she believed in that day. The day he'd come back, the day it would all make sense, the day they'd sit down, look each other in the eyes, and finally say all the things they never could. She didn't need a movie ending. She just needed closure, one last chapter, one honest conversation. So she waited. She built a life, but she waited. She smiled in photos, but she waited. She laughed, traveled, worked. But in quiet moments, she looked toward the door that never opened. She told herself she didn't care anymore, that she was over it, that she had healed. But deep down, she thought that day would come, even years later, even after he moved on, even when it no longer made sense. She still believed there would be a moment where he'd remember, where he'd feel what she still couldn't say. She imagined the apology, the tears, the long hug, the chance to say, "I'm sorry I left too soon. I'm sorry I didn't see you clearly. I'm sorry I made you feel like you weren't enough." But that moment never came, because he never returned. He never reached out. He never looked back. And slowly, that hope she clung to began to rot. She stopped waiting, but not because she wanted to, because she had no choice. The silence stopped meaning maybe. It started meaning never. She checked her messages less, stopped checking his name, stopped listening to songs that used to carry his voice. But even as the world moved on, a part of her stayed frozen, in that doorway, waiting for a knock that never came. And eventually, she had to admit, that day, the one she built stories around, dreams around, healing around, was never coming. Because he had already arrived at his peace, at his closure, at his ending, just not with her. And that's the part no one warns you about. Not every story has a final scene. Not every goodbye gets a reply. Not every love comes full circle. Some just fade out while you're still rehearsing what you would have said. She doesn't cry about him anymore. She doesn't hate him. She doesn't even miss him the way she used to. But some nights, she remembers the day that never came. And she whispers the words she never got to say, to no one, to nothing, to silence itself. I was wrong. I wasn't ready. And now, I know you're not coming back. Then she turns off the light, closes her eyes, and lets that day finally die. Because if it was ever going to happen, it would have happened by now. And some stories don't need a second chance. They just need an ending.